distinguishing characteristic was a belief in an oral law that God gave to Moses at Sinai along with the Torah. The Torah, or written law, was akin to the United States Constitution in the sense that it set down a series of laws that were open to interpretation. The Pharisees believed that God also gave Moses the knowledge of what these laws meant and how they should be applied. This oral tradition was codified and written down roughly 3 centuries later in what is known as the Talmud. The Pharisees also maintained that an afterlife existed and that God punished the wicked and rewarded the righteous in the world to come. They also believed in a Messiah who would herald an era of world peace. Pharisees were, in a sense, blue-collar Jews who adhered to the tenets of developed after destruction of the temple. That is, such things as individual prayer and assembly and synagogue. And keep in mind, these are some of the things that developed while we were in captivity. Okay? While there was another nation overruling us, controlling us. And a lot of what was going on actually affected what it was we were doing and how we believed. Now, just to touch on a couple things. First, let me emphasize again, when we look back at the Pharisees and everybody else we're going to get into, it is important to note that during that time they were people of color. People from the other nations did come in and they were among us, but we were predominantly, especially when you get into genetically or the genealogy, we were people of color. All right? So the Pharisees, being the fathers of modern Judaism, think about that. Now you have a lot of Hebrew Israelite brothers out there who speak harshly against the Talmud and a lot of the Jewish writings, as they call them. But here's the truth about it. It was our forefathers who put these things together. Now, it was years later when it was actually put in book form. But during that time, it was actually passed down from teacher to student. Okay? That's how it was transmitted. Now, there are some things that you find in the Talmud that are totally wrong. But some of the information that you find in the Mishnah, which is a part of the Talmud, as well as some of the Midrashic writings, there's some truth there. But again, what has happened, because of the influence of the Greeks during that time, the Greeks are your fathers of modern philosophy. So during that time, and under the influence of the Greeks, you had a lot of our Jewish brothers and sisters, they were geared towards philosophizing when it came to the Word. That's where a lot of these different doctrines come from. Okay? So now, one excerpt I wanted to share is from the book of Matthew, chapter 15, and beginning at verse 1, which reads, Then came Yahushua, scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? Now listen to that. The tradition of the elders. See, one of the things that went on, understanding the power that the Creator had given, they abused that power and they started to add restrictions that were taking people away from obeying what Hadurah or the Torah taught, and they began to worry or focus on the dictates of the rabbis. Okay? So when he asked this question, why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders, for they wash not their hands when they eat bread? In other words, the rabbis have now instituted that you had to say a blessing and wash your hands before you eat any food. This was what the rabbis did. And keep in mind, they were black folks. So let's move on. Verse 3. And he answered and said unto them, Why do you also transgress the commandment of Yah by your tradition? So you see what's happening now. Our forefathers became so big-headed and high-minded that they actually began to add to the Word, and from the additions to the Word, now they began to transgress the commandment that was given by the Creator through Moshe. Verse 4. For Yah commanded, saying, honor your father and mother, and he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But you say, now think about this, here are the Pharisees, among whom were the elite of the people. This is what they say. Whosoever shall say to his father or his mother, it is a gift, by whatsoever you might be profited by me. In other words, when it says to honor your father and your mother, what that means, literally speaking, is to take care of them when they are now in need of being taken care of. So what the Pharisees were saying, if you have some money that you're going to give to your parents to take care of them, if you don't want to do that and you want to give it to us for a gift, that's perfectly fine. It's okay. That's what they're doing. Similar to what a lot of these prosperity ministers out here are doing. They did the same thing back then. Okay? It was about money, greed. Keep that in mind. It says, verse 6, and honor not his father or his mother. He shall be free. Thus have you made the commandment of Yah of none effect by your tradition. Listen to that. Because you instituted this stipulation that if you want to take this money that's used to take care of your parents and you want to give it as a gift or an offering to the temple, it's fine. But it wasn't fine because that's not what the Most High said. So let's move on. Verse 7. Ye hypocrites, well did Yeshayahu prophesy of you, saying, this people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth. In other words, lip service. And honoreth me with their lips. But their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. This is what they were reduced to. They moved away from what Moshe had established, and now they turned it into something totally different. And keep in mind, the Pharisees, or Perushim, are the fathers of modern day Judaism. So let's see that. Let's go to one of the letters that Brother Shaul wrote to the Philippians in chapter 3 and verse 4, which reads, though I might have confidence in the flesh, if any other man thinketh that he hath whereof he might trust in the flesh, I more. Circumcised the 8th day. Now he's about to run down his pedigree. And at this point, he's using it as an example. He's showing his status among the people before his conversion to the truth. He was circumcised the 8th day. He's of the stock of Israel. See how it's acknowledging that he's from the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin. As we were saying, if you come from any of those tribes, you are an Israelite. But now being more specific, he's a Benjamite. Okay? Benjaminite. He said, of the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of the Hebrews. He still acknowledges, I'm an Israelite, I'm of one of the tribes, I'm a Hebrew. Okay? But then he says, as touching the law, a Pharisee. Because see, during that time, Pharisees, they obeyed the strictness as they thought or as they believed of the law. But it just so happened, the strictness that they were referring to were based on their own dictates, or as Mashiach said, the commandments of men. So, that being said, now let's go to another letter that he wrote. And this is in Galatians, the letter he wrote to Galatia, the assembly there, chapter 1, verses 13 and 14. And it says, for you have heard my conversation in time past, in the Jews' religion. Now, one of the mistakes that a lot of believers make today, when they hear Jews' religion, automatically they know and understand that Jews believe in the Old Testament. And because Jews believe in the Old Testament, when they hear Jews' religion, they just think that it's everything pertaining to the Old Testament. But what they fail to realize is that what they were doing during this particular time was not what the Most High gave. As Messiah already said, how they made void the commandments of the Most High for their own traditions. Okay? So this is what the Jews' religion was reduced to. So let's continue. Verse 13 again. For you have heard of my conversation, and conversation in Middle English language means my life.